The night the hospital called changed everything. Dr. Mateo Rivera, a respected pediatrician in Chicago, Illinois, found himself staring at four small faces, two boys and two girls ranging from 5 to 12 years old, huddled together in the emergency room after their parents' tragic car accident. A handwritten note in their mother's purse labeling them all as mistakes that should never have been born. What started as a routine case quickly became Mateo's personal battleground, one that would force him to face the ghosts of his own past as a gay man rejected by his conservative family years ago in a small Texas town. He knelt beside the oldest boy, 12-year-old Lucas, whose eyes held a mix of fear and defiance that mirrored Mateo's childhood memories too closely. "You're safe now," Mateo whispered, his voice steady despite the knot in his chest. The little girl, 5-year-old Emma, clutched a worn teddy bear and wouldn't let go of her sister's hand. The twins, 8-year-old Mia and Noah, sat silently, their clothes still smelling of smoke from the crash site. Social services had been notified, but the system moved slowly, and Mateo couldn't walk away. Not when the attending nurse had read the note aloud in the hallway, her voice dripping with pity that made his stomach turn. By morning, Mateo had pulled strings to keep the children in the hospital longer than necessary, citing minor injuries that needed observation. He sat with them through breakfast, telling stories about superheroes who turned pain into power, all while his mind raced back to his own parents' words the day he came out at 19. "You're the biggest mistake we ever made." Those words had driven him to medical school, to Chicago, to a life where he helped others heal what he could never fix in himself. Now, watching these four kids, he felt the old wound reopen. Antonio Morales arrived just after noon, the assigned caseworker from Child Protective Services, a tall man in his mid-30s with kind brown eyes and a quiet strength that immediately put the children at ease. "Dr. Rivera, I appreciate you staying with them," Antonio said, extending a hand. Their handshake lingered a second longer than professional, and Mateo felt an unexpected spark. Antonio had reviewed the file overnight. "The uncle in Florida wants custody, but he's got a record of instability. We need a temporary placement while we sort this out." Mateo nodded, already knowing what he was about to offer. "I have space. My apartment is big enough, and I'm certified for emergency fostering." Antonio raised an eyebrow, surprised. Most doctors didn't volunteer like this. As they reviewed paperwork in the quiet hallway, Mateo learned Antonio had grown up in a similar broken home in California, though he kept the details guarded. The conversation flowed easily. Two men bonded by the weight of helping kids society had already written off. By evening, the children were packed into Mateo's SUV, their small suitcases a stark reminder of how little they had left. At home, Mateo transformed his guest room into a makeshift sanctuary with extra blankets and nightlights. Lucas helped set up the bunk beds while Emma clung to Mateo's leg. "Are we really mistakes?" she asked in a tiny voice. Mateo knelt again, heartbreaking. "No one is a mistake, sweetheart. Sometimes grown-ups say things they don't mean when they're hurting." Antonio stayed late that first night, helping with dinner and bedtime stories. As they stood in the kitchen washing dishes afterward, Antonio confessed quietly, "I see a lot of cases, but these four, they hit different, like they were waiting for someone who understands." Mateo met his gaze, the air between them charged with something neither named yet. The next weeks blurred into routines of school drop-offs, therapy sessions, and late-night talks. Mateo noticed how Lucas withdrew, angry at the world, while the twins fought over toys to mask their grief. Emma had nightmares, waking the house with screams. Mateo balanced hospital shifts with fostering duties, his colleagues raising eyebrows at his sudden family life. But Antonio became a constant, stopping by after work with groceries or games, his presence a steady anchor. One evening, after putting the kids to bed, they sat on the balcony overlooking the Chicago skyline. Antonio shared his own story, how he'd hidden his sexuality for years in a strict Catholic family, only coming out after losing his sister to illness. "I promised myself I'd never let another kid feel invisible," he said. Mateo felt seen for the first time in years. Yet cracks appeared quickly. The uncle, Derek, called demanding the children, His voice slurred over the phone with accusations that Mateo was not fit because of rumors about his personal life. Mateo hung up, fists clenched, the old shame rising. That night he couldn't sleep, staring at the ceiling and wondering if he was repeating his parents' cycle by taking in kids he might fail. Antonio texted late, "You're doing more than enough. Don't doubt that." The simple words eased the knot in Mateo's chest just enough to let him rest. The children began to open up. Lucas joined a school soccer team, scoring his first goal with Mateo and Antonio cheering from the sidelines. Mia drew pictures of their new home, labeling it "safe place." Noah asked endless questions about doctors inspired by Mateo. Emma started calling Mateo Doc Matt and Antonio Uncle Tony. The four of them formed a fragile unit, laughter replacing tears for hours at a time. But Mateo knew the court hearing loomed in 3 months, and the system favored blood relatives despite Derek's issues. As autumn leaves fell across Chicago, Mateo realized his feelings for Antonio had deepened beyond professional respect. During a quiet moment folding laundry, their hands brushed, and neither pulled away. "This isn't just about the kids anymore, is it?" Antonio asked softly. Mateo shook his head, fear and hope colliding. For the first time since Texas, he allowed himself to imagine a future where love didn't have to be hidden. Yet the weight of the children's future pressed down, reminding him every choice carried consequences. The journey had only begun, and the real tests waited just beyond the horizon. Winter arrived with biting winds off Lake Michigan, turning the city into a snow globe that mirrored the turbulence inside Mateo's home. The children adapted faster than expected, but Lucas's anger simmered beneath the surface. One afternoon after school, he exploded at dinner, slamming his fork down. "Why do you even care? You're not our dad, and he's just some guy from the state." The words cut deep, echoing the rejection Mateo had carried for decades. He excused himself to the balcony, breath visible in the cold air, questioning if his decision to foster had been selfish. Antonio found him there, coatless and shivering. Kids test boundaries when they're scared. Give him time. Their conversation stretched into the night, Antonio sharing stories of his own teenage rebellion that had nearly cost him everything. By Christmas, traditions formed despite the uncertainty. Mateo and Antonio took the children to a tree farm outside the city, where Emma picked the tallest, most lopsided pine. Back home, they decorated while holiday music played. Lucas reluctantly hung an ornament, then smiled when Mateo praised his placement. The twins made paper chains that draped the entire living room. For the first time, the apartment felt like a real home. Antonio stayed for dinner and gift opening, presenting each child with personalized books about heroes who overcame impossible odds. To Mateo, he gave a simple silver keychain engraved with coordinates of the hospital where they first met. "So you remember where this started?" Antonio said quietly in the kitchen later. The moment hung heavy with possibility, but Mateo hesitated, the fear of complicating the custody case holding him back. New Year's brought the first major setback. Derek arrived unannounced at the apartment door, demanding to see the kids. His breath smelled of alcohol, and his words turned venomous when he spotted Antonio. "I knew it. 2 men playing house with my sister's children? Over my dead body." Mateo blocked the doorway, heart pounding, while Antonio calmly called security. The confrontation ended with police escorting Derek away, but the damage lingered. Lucas overheard everything and retreated to his room for days. "Is it true? Are we just your experiment?" he asked Mateo one night. The question forced Mateo to confront his past openly. He sat on the edge of the bed and told Lucas about growing up gay in Texas, the beatings, the exile. "I was called a mistake too, but I built something better. You can too." The honesty cracked Lucas's armor, leading to a tentative hug that lasted minutes. Antonio's role deepened beyond caseworker. He began attending family therapy sessions with Mateo and the kids, his insights helping the therapist unpack layers of grief and abandonment. Privately, their bond grew through late-night phone calls and stolen coffees during lunch breaks. One snowy evening, after the children were asleep, Antonio stayed over on the couch. They talked until dawn about dreams deferred, Mateo's wish for a private practice focused on LGBTQ youth, Antonio's desire to start a nonprofit for foster families. The conversation ended with a soft kiss, tentative and full of promise. "Whatever happens in court, this feels right," Antonio whispered. Mateo agreed, but the looming hearing cast a shadow. Spring brought renewal and new challenges. The twins thrived in school, winning science fair ribbons with projects inspired by Mateo's medical stories. Emma's nightmares faded, replaced by drawings of their expanded family. Lucas joined the debate club, arguing passionately about children's rights. Yet the court date approached and social workers conducted home visits that scrutinized every detail. Mateo worried his sexuality would be weaponized, despite Illinois laws protecting against discrimination. Antonio reassured him during a walk along the lakefront. "We've built something real here. The judge will see that." Their hands brushed in public for the first time, a small act of defiance that filled Mateo with quiet pride. Internally, Mateo wrestled with identity crises he thought he'd buried. Helping the children heal forced him to examine his own unresolved pain from his family's rejection. He started journaling again, pages filled with reflections on what fatherhood meant beyond biology. Antonio noticed the change and encouraged therapy for Mateo too. "You're carrying everyone else's weight. Let me carry some of yours." Their relationship blossomed in small ways: shared meals, inside jokes, quiet support during tough shifts at the hospital. The children sensed the shift, calling Antonio Tony more often and asking when he would move in permanently. The question both thrilled and terrified Mateo. A breakthrough came when the school counselor reported Lucas's improved grades and emotional openness. The principal even wrote a letter for court praising the stable environment Mateo provided. Yet Derek's lawyers pushed back hard, painting the arrangement as temporary and unsuitable. The battle lines were drawn, and Mateo realized he would have to sacrifice more than time. His hospital director hinted at promotion opportunities that required travel, clashing with foster responsibilities. Choosing family over career felt right but scary. Antonio stood beside him through every decision, their love becoming the steady force guiding them forward. As cherry blossoms bloomed in Grant Park, the five of them picnicked together, laughter echoing like proof that healing was possible. The real test still waited in the courtroom, but for the first time, Mateo believed they might win. Summer heat settled over Chicago like a blanket, turning the apartment into a haven of fans and ice cream runs. The court hearing loomed in 6 weeks, and tension thickened the air. Derek had filed additional motions, claiming Mateo and Antonio's relationship created an unstable environment. The accusation stung, especially when leaked to local news in a small article that named the case. Colleagues at the hospital whispered, and one nurse even asked Mateo directly if he was using the kids to cover something. He responded with quiet dignity, focusing on his patients, but the doubt gnawed at him during long shifts. Lucas bore the brunt of the publicity at school, coming home with a black eye after defending his new family. "They called you and Tony weirdos," he admitted through tears. Mateo cleaned the cut, heart aching, while Antonio sat with him afterward. "You're teaching him strength by example," Antonio said later that night as they shared a bottle of wine on the balcony. Their conversation turned intimate, hands intertwined, voices low to avoid waking the children. For the first time, they discussed the future openly: adoption papers, a bigger house in the suburbs, building a life where no one was labeled a mistake. The kiss that followed carried months of restrained emotion, deepening their connection in ways words couldn't capture. The children responded to the growing stability with small miracles. Mia and Noah organized a lemonade stand to raise money for family court stuff, earning $23 that they proudly presented to Mateo. Emma drew a family portrait with 6 figures: herself, her siblings, Mateo, and Antonio, all holding hands under a rainbow. Lucas started calling Mateo Dad accidentally during a soccer game, then corrected himself quickly. The slip revealed how deeply the bonds had formed. Mateo pulled him aside afterward. "You can call me that if you want. No pressure." The boy's nod was all the confirmation needed. Antonio faced his own crossroads when his supervisor questioned his involvement. "You're too close to the case, Morales. Step back or risk your job." He chose to stay, taking personal leave to support the family. The sacrifice spoke volumes, and Mateo recognized the parallel to his own choices. During a weekend trip to the Indiana Dunes, the six of them built sandcastles and watched the sunset. Antonio slipped his arm around Mateo's waist when the children weren't looking. "This is what I want every day," he murmured. The moment felt like the calm before the storm. Back in the city, a misunderstanding threatened everything. Derek released old photos of Mateo from his college days at Pride events, twisting them into evidence of lifestyle issues. The children's biological grandparents, previously absent, suddenly supported Derek's claim. Mateo spent sleepless nights reviewing legal documents, his confidence cracking. Antonio found him in the study at 3 a.m. "We're in this together. Remember why we started." Their embrace turned into a night of quiet confessions, each sharing fears of failing the children. The honesty strengthened them, turning potential fracture into deeper unity. Therapy sessions became weekly anchors. The counselor helped the kids process grief while guiding Mateo and Antonio through the complexities of blending romance with parenting. Emma's drawings evolved from sad faces to smiling families. The twins argued less, channeling energy into joint projects. Lucas volunteered at a youth center, mentoring younger kids who faced similar rejections. The changes were tangible proof that love could rewrite narratives. Yet the court date approached relentlessly. One evening, after a particularly draining hospital shift, Mateo returned to find Antonio cooking dinner with all 4 children helping. The scene, laughter, spilled flour, and a handmade banner reading "We love our dads," melted the day's stress. He joined them, rolling pasta dough alongside Lucas, who teased him about his clumsy technique. Antonio caught his eye across the table, a silent promise passing between them. In that ordinary moment, Mateo understood the true meaning of family. Not blood, but choice. The upcoming hearing would test that belief, but the foundation they had built felt unbreakable. As fireflies danced outside the window, the 6 of them sat on the floor playing board games until bedtime, the apartment filled with a warmth no court document could erase. The final weeks before the hearing brought unexpected allies. Several hospital colleagues wrote character letters, praising Mateo's dedication. A neighbor who had watched the children play testified to their happiness. Even the school principal attended a pretrial meeting, advocating for continuity. Antonio's nonprofit idea gained traction with local donors, positioning him for funding that could support similar families. The momentum felt hopeful, yet Mateo remained cautious. He had seen the system fail too many times. Internally, his journey of self-acceptance accelerated. Late nights talking with Antonio helped him release the last remnants of shame from Texas. "You turned your pain into purpose," Antonio reminded him often. The words echoed during quiet moments at work, reinforcing his resolve. The children sensed the shift too, becoming more affectionate and secure. Emma's nightmares ended completely. The family unit solidified, ready for whatever the judge decided. As the date neared, Mateo and Antonio stood on the balcony one last time, arms around each other, watching city lights twinkle. "Win or lose, we already rewrote their story," Mateo said. Antonio nodded, pulling him closer. The love they shared had already changed everything. The courtroom smelled of polished wood and nervous sweat. Mateo sat rigidly beside Antonio, their hands hidden beneath the table and clasped tightly for strength. The 4 children waited in a side room with a guardian, unaware of how much hinged on the next hours. Derek's lawyer painted a damning picture, emphasizing Mateo's sexuality and Antonio's conflict of interest as reasons to remove the children immediately. "These men are playing house at the expense of 4 innocent lives," the attorney argued. Whispers rippled through the gallery. Mateo felt the old Texas shame rise, but Antonio's steady grip grounded him. When it was their turn, Mateo spoke from the heart about every bedtime story, every soccer game, every tear wiped away. "These kids aren't mistakes. They're miracles who taught me what family really means." The judge, a no-nonsense woman in her 50s, listened intently. She asked pointed questions about their living arrangements, support network, and long-term plans. Antonio presented evidence of the children's progress, report cards, therapist notes, even the lemonade stand earnings donated to charity. The turning point came when Lucas was called to speak. The 12-year-old stood tall. "Dr. Matt and Tony saved us. They're the only ones who never called us mistakes." His voice cracked but didn't break. The judge nodded thoughtfully. A recess followed, during which Mateo and Antonio stepped outside for air. "Whatever happens, I love you," Antonio said simply. The words, spoken publicly for the first time, filled Mateo with courage he didn't know he possessed. Back inside, the judge ruled in their favor for continued temporary custody, citing the children's best interests and the stable environment created. Permanent adoption proceedings could begin after 6 months of monitoring. Derek stormed out, defeated. Outside the courthouse, the children ran into their arms, tears mixing with laughter. Emma hugged both men tightly. "We get to stay forever?" she asked. Mateo nodded, voice thick. The celebration that evening filled the apartment with pizza, balloons, and promises of a bigger future. Yet victory brought new complications. News coverage of the case attracted attention, some positive, some hateful. Mateo received anonymous threats at the hospital, forcing security changes. Antonio's leave ended, but his nonprofit received a major grant, allowing flexibility. Their relationship faced its first real test when an old college friend of Antonio's appeared, stirring jealousy Mateo hadn't anticipated. During a heated argument one night after the kids slept, Mateo accused Antonio of hiding parts of his past. "I trusted you with everything," he said. Antonio explained the friendship was platonic, but the misunderstanding revealed deeper insecurities. They talked until sunrise, emerging stronger, with renewed commitment to honesty. Summer turned to fall again, and the adoption process accelerated. Home studies, background checks, and family interviews filled their calendar. The children thrived. Lucas made honor roll. The twins joined a dance class. Emma started kindergarten with confidence. Mateo reduced his hospital hours to focus on private practice dreams, inspired by the kids' resilience. Antonio balanced work and home seamlessly, becoming the steady co-parent Mateo had always needed. Their love deepened through shared routines. Morning coffee together, evening walks, quiet affirmations whispered in the dark. A crisis tested them mid-process. Emma developed pneumonia, landing her back in Mateo's hospital. The fear of losing her echoed the original accident, bringing nightmares for everyone. Mateo stayed by her bedside around the clock, Antonio managing the others at home. During one exhausted night, Mateo broke down in the chapel. "What if I can't protect them?" Antonio found him there, pulling him into an embrace. "We're doing this together. Always." Emma recovered fully, and the scare strengthened their bond as a family. The children drew get-well cards that covered her hospital wall. Each one signed, "Love, your family." As winter approached once more, the adoption hearing loomed. This time, no opposition appeared. Derek had withdrawn his claim after personal setbacks. The same judge presided, smiling as she reviewed the updated reports. "It is clear these 6 individuals have formed an extraordinary family." The gavel fell, finalizing the adoption. Cheers erupted in the courtroom. Outside, they took photos under the Chicago flag, 6 new legal names etched into history. Rivera Morales. The drive home felt like floating, the children chattering about future vacations and room redecorations. That evening, after bedtime stories, Mateo and Antonio sat on the balcony with hot chocolate. "We did it," Mateo said, leaning into Antonio's shoulder. The city lights blurred through happy tears. Their journey had transformed 4 labeled mistakes into cherished children and 2 guarded men into partners building something lasting. Yet growth continued. Mateo still attended therapy, processing old wounds. Antonio expanded his nonprofit to include more families like theirs. The children asked questions about being gay, receiving age-appropriate answers that normalized love in all forms. A quiet moment of reflection came during a family hike in the forest preserves. Lucas lagged behind with Mateo. "Thanks for choosing us, Dad." The title, spoken intentionally, healed something deep inside Mateo. Back home, Antonio cooked a special dinner, and they toasted to new beginnings. The love between the two men had become the foundation everything else rested upon. Solid, tested, and true. As snow began to fall outside, the apartment glowed with warmth that no external judgment could touch. The story wasn't over, but the chapter of doubt had closed forever. The first year as a legal family passed in a whirlwind of milestones. Lucas turned 13 with a backyard barbecue attended by school friends who now accepted his two dads without question. The twins performed in their first dance recital, Mia in a sparkly tutu and Noah breaking gender norms in tap shoes. Emma lost her first tooth, proudly showing the gap to everyone. Mateo opened his small private clinic focused on pediatric care for LGBTQ families, the waiting room filled with rainbow stickers the children helped design. Antonio's nonprofit grew, securing federal funding that allowed them to hire staff and expand services. Life settled into a rhythm of school runs, clinic hours, and weekend adventures. Yet maturity brought new layers of complexity. Lucas began questioning his own identity, confiding in Mateo late one night about feelings for a boy at school. "Does that make me like you and Tony?" The conversation stretched hours, Mateo sharing his journey without pressure. Antonio joined later, offering perspective from his experiences. The openness strengthened their father-son bond, proving the family could handle truth with grace. The twins navigated typical sibling rivalries, while Emma's empathy grew, often mediating disputes with hugs. External pressures resurfaced when Mateo's parents reached out after seeing a local news feature on the adoption. His mother called first, voice hesitant. "We saw the article. Those children. They sound lucky." Years of silence broke in awkward conversations. Mateo invited them for a cautious visit, preparing the children and Antonio. The meeting was tense at first, old prejudices surfacing, but the kids' innocence melted some ice. Emma's drawing of Grandma and Grandpa prompted tears. Healing wasn't instant, but seeds were planted. Antonio supported every step, reminding Mateo that forgiveness was a choice, not an obligation. Their romantic life evolved too. Date nights became sacred, dinners downtown, theater tickets, or simple picnics where they could be just two men in love. One evening at a rooftop restaurant overlooking the lake, Antonio proposed with a simple ring. "Marry me, Mateo. Let's make this official for all 6 of us." Tears flowed as Mateo accepted, the children learning the news the next morning with excited screams and group hugs. Wedding plans began modestly, focused on family and close friends. Challenges tested them still. A clinic funding scare required Mateo to advocate publicly, drawing on his story of transformation. Antonio faced burnout from the nonprofit's demands, leading to honest discussions about balance. They attended couples counseling, emerging with better communication tools. The children witnessed healthy conflict resolution, learning that love involved work. Lucas's first heartbreak taught everyone empathy, the family rallying around him with ice cream and board games. Spring brought the wedding in a small park by the lake. The children walked down the aisle as flower kids, Lucas carrying rings with pride. Vows exchanged under blooming trees spoke of chosen family, second chances, and love that rewrote fates. "You taught me that mistakes don't define us," Mateo said, looking into Antonio's eyes. Guests cheered as they kissed, the 6 of them officially united. The reception featured dances, laughter, and toasts from colleagues and new grandparents. Mateo's parents attended, offering tentative congratulations that felt like progress. Post-wedding life deepened their commitment. They bought a house in the suburbs with a backyard for soccer and treehouses. The children settled into new schools, thriving with the stability. Mateo's clinic expanded, hiring Antonio part-time for family support programs. Evenings filled with homework help, story time, and quiet couple moments after bedtime. Reflection came during a family vacation to California, visiting Antonio's childhood home. Standing on the beach where he once hid his identity, Antonio turned to Mateo. "I never imagined this life. Thank you for helping me build it." The children played in the waves, their laughter carrying on the wind like proof of transformation. Back in Chicago, routine resumed with deeper appreciation. Lucas came out officially at school, supported fully by his dads. The twins started a family blog about adoption stories, gaining young followers. Emma declared she wanted to be a doctor like Mateo. Each milestone reinforced the journey's worth. Internal growth continued. Mateo volunteered at youth shelters, sharing his story to prevent other mistakes. Antonio mentored new caseworkers, emphasizing compassion over bureaucracy. Their love remained the quiet force binding everything. One ordinary Tuesday, after a long day, they tucked the children in and sat on the porch swing of their new home. Stars dotted the sky as they held hands. "We rewrote more than their fate," Antonio said. Mateo smiled, pulling him close. The path had been filled with pain, misunderstanding, and sacrifice, but every step led to this peace. The family they created proved love's power to heal what society tried to break. As seasons changed once more, the six of them faced the future united, stronger than any label or prejudice could ever touch. Years blended into a tapestry of ordinary miracles. Lucas graduated high school with honors, heading to college on scholarship to study social work like Antonio. The twins entered middle school, forming clubs that championed inclusivity. Emma, now 10, shadowed Mateo at the clinic, asking endless questions about medicine. The house echoed with teenage arguments, sibling laughter, and family dinners that stretched long into evenings. Mateo and Antonio celebrated their 5th wedding anniversary with a quiet vow renewal surrounded by the children, now fully integrated into their identities as Rivera Morales kids. Mateo's parents visited regularly, fully reconciled after therapy and time. His mother baked cookies with Emma, while his father attended Lucas's soccer games without comment on the two-dad dynamic. Healing rippled outward, touching extended relatives who once stayed distant. Antonio's nonprofit became a national model, inspiring programs in multiple states. The clinic thrived, serving hundreds of families who mirrored their own story. Public speaking invitations poured in, and both men shared their journey at conferences, emphasizing how love defied labels. Challenges persisted in subtler forms. Lucas faced discrimination at college, calling home for advice that Mateo and Antonio provided without hesitation. The twins navigated identity questions of their own, supported by open family discussions. Emma dealt with a bully at school, learning resilience through role-playing at home. Each hurdle strengthened their unit, proving the foundation built in those early chaotic months remained solid. A profound moment arrived when the children, now older, sat them down for a family meeting. "We know our biological parents called us mistakes," Lucas began. "But you showed us we're not." The others nodded, sharing how the love from Mateo and Antonio had rewritten their self-perception. Tears flowed as the six embraced, the circle complete. That night, after the kids slept, Mateo and Antonio reflected on the balcony of their home. "We didn't just save them," Mateo said. "They saved us too." Antonio agreed, their kiss gentle under the moonlight. The story continued evolving. Mateo reduced clinic hours to spend more time mentoring youth groups. Antonio expanded the nonprofit internationally through virtual training. Family vacations became annual traditions, camping in national parks, beach trips, even a return to Texas where Mateo faced old ghosts with Antonio's hand in his. The children grew into compassionate adults in training, each carrying forward the lessons of chosen family. As another decade approached, the six remained close despite college departures and life changes. Lucas returned for summers to intern at the nonprofit. The twins pursued arts and science paths with passion. Emma followed her dream into pediatrics. Holidays reunited them all, laughter filling the house as stories were retold. Mateo and Antonio, now in their 50s, watched with pride, their love having aged like fine wine, deeper, steadier, unbreakable. One quiet evening, with the house full again for Thanksgiving, Mateo looked around the table at the faces that had once been terrified in a hospital room. The journey from branded mistakes to beloved family had spanned years of conflict, understanding, betrayal by the system, and ultimate triumph through sacrifice and awakening. Their bond proved that identity crises could lead to clarity, that societal pressure could be overcome with courage, and that love between two men could anchor an entire legacy. True or false? Family is defined by blood, not by the love we choose to give.